Terry McLaurin is expected to get a huge contract soon, but is that actually a good thing for his long-term dynasty outlook? That and more today on the Dynasty Newsletter. I'm your host, Adam Wilde, joined by my co-host, Chris Allen. Chris, usually we're excited about long-term contracts for wide receivers on our fantasy teams, but I don't know if a long-term contract for Terry McLaurin is exactly a good thing for his long-term value. What are you thinking about that news?
No, I think it's good because if we want to at least think about what his personal situation, let's take a step back from the offensive situation. But if we want to look at his personal situation and thinking about what his longevity is going to be to that franchise, any chances of him possibly getting moved, a la Marquise Brown, although Hollywood wound up going to I would say, better situation than where he was at previously. But the point being, you could wind up getting traded to another team like, let's say, Kenny Galladay going from Detroit, where he was essentially the dude, taking more of those like deeper shots and now going to Daniel Jones. I mean, so there are like pros and cons of a wide receiver getting moved like while they're young. So at least we know where he's going to be at. And at least looking at the contract situation for Carson Wentz, it doesn't seem like it's going to be a long-term situation for Carson Wentz to be under center for the Washington Commanders. So
True.
it can't, I guess to say it can't get worse is probably, I don't know, there might be, I don't know if I'm going down the right path with that, but it's just more of their plan is not going to, it does not revolve around Carson Wentz. Their plan revolves around bringing along that wide receiver group that they currently have, whether it's the guys they drafted this year, or even if they still want to stick with Curtis Samuel or
Yeah, I was
De'Ami
going to say
Brown or
Curtis
whomever.
Samuel. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah.
So it's like, that gives me more, I guess, more of a positive shine to Terry McLaurin versus just what he has to deal with this year and then the quarterback play he's had to deal with in the past. And if he's been able to, get by on what, like he had a 25%, like 25% target share last year, like held around in that same area around 23%, like since his rookie season, if he's been able to get essentially wide receiver one, or let's say 1B numbers
Mhm.
since he's been a rookie, and now he already has like a long-term deal in place, the volume should be there, opportunities should be there, red zone targets should be there, and it's just we're waiting on the quarterback play to improve. And I think for a wide receiver of his caliber that's been capable of showing that he's at least in the top 24 on a yearly basis since he's been a rookie, I will more than gladly take my shot on a guy like that and just wait for the quarterback to improve, which will then allow us to get more of an access to his ceiling, which we know he already has.
Sure. I mean, let's take a step back and look at what we think about contracts in general in Dynasty. Like for running backs, for example, when they change teams, I'm scared to death. Usually I want to try to trade running backs before they trade teams because
Yeah.
they go to a team and usually they end up being like the 1B, even if they're really talented, or even the clear cut backup. Like Melvin Gordon went in and he was the clear cut starter, right? And then he's kind of shifted roles to ending up being a backup. And that's almost best case scenario because he's still producing well, but his ceiling is capped, and he was a prime running back, right? So
Yeah.
it's really tough with running backs. You don't really want them to switch teams, but wide receivers have an easier time of carving out opportunity for themselves as there's so many more. And yes, there's only one ball to go around with three wide receivers, but when you're a wide receiver of Terry McLaurin's caliber, even Marquise Brown's caliber, you expect a certain amount of targets are going to go to him. There's not going to be the hot hand approach that these running backs take that end up getting them relegated to like the 1B or the pass catching role or the short yardage role. Wide receivers generally going to be on the field often. They're going to earn their targets. So with Terry McLaurin, it's almost a situation where I don't know if there is a worse situation out there. I mean, there are certainly worse quarterback situations, but there's probably not worse quarterback paired with organization situations. Like Jaguars, probably the worst organization in the NFL with Shad Khan in charge, but they have Trevor Lawrence. Washington has Carson Wentz and they've got Dan Snyder. And I just don't know how you overcome that. And that's how I never end up with Washington players on my rosters because that team has no direction. Like you say that Carson Wentz isn't their long term option. I would argue that he probably is, even though that's clearly wrong to me. That's clearly wrong to you. They didn't even have to invest that much. They
Mm-hmm.
probably within that organization internally think that Carson Wentz could be a long term answer. I mean, some of those guys remember Carson Wentz dicing them up 3-4 years ago and think that they can unlock that because all these guys, it's an ego league. all these guys think that they're going to fix Carson Wentz. Frank Reich thought that he could fix Carson Wentz. Frank Reich probably thought that the only thing that was wrong with Carson Wentz was that he wasn't working with Frank Reich. And I really like Frank Reich, but I mean, that's what he had to have thought, because the only variable that was different, besides that Carson Wentz hurt his back during like an MVP caliber season and then just was never the same. I don't even think it has to do with the back. It's just he never got back to that caliber. So maybe Frank Reich thought he was that variable that was necessary, and now maybe the Washington front office thinks that they're the variable that's necessary. But either way, they've handled the quarterback situation horribly in every situation possible. Even when they luckboxed themselves into Kirk Cousins after the fall of Robert Griffin III, they still mishandled it miserably. So they landed on good quarterback play from Kirk Cousins, but at the cost of 2 franchise tags, which was a ton of money, and then got nothing out of it except for maybe a comp pick. I don't even think you might not even get a comp pick after franchising 2 times. I don't even know. So they might not have even got a comp pick out of them. So all that to say, when you bet on Terry McLaurin, maybe right now that he doesn't have the long-term contract, his value seems kind of low. I saw some conversation about him on Twitter earlier today where his trade value was all over the place. 2023 first, sometimes for seconds and a throw-in. If you can obtain him for a second and a throw-in, yes, absolutely. I don't know that I want to give a 2023 right now and not know where it's going to fall. What happens if my team goes sideways and it's the 106? I'd rather the 106 in 2023 probably than Terry McLaurin. And I don't think that Jahan Dotson really affects him too much. I mean, I think that Jahan Dotson was overdrafted a little bit anyways. I felt like he was a late first, early second kind of guy. So if he would have fell into the second, it's like, all right, it's not a big deal that he's coming in. But since he went in the first, everyone, is going to be kind of weary. And that's what might present a little buying window for Terry McLaurin. So the conversation has to be centered around that. Like, what is his price? Okay. Because if the price is a 2023 first and I'm not very good, and I have to wait 2 more years for Terry McLaurin to find a competent quarterback, and at that point he's 27 going on 28, he might not be right for your team. If your team is one Terry McLaurin away and you maybe won the championship last year, all right, maybe you send your 2023 first for him, right? So very circumstantial. He's very all over the place, but I'd almost rather the Washington Commanders let his contract situation go sour like they usually do. And, especially since it would be so Washington to let him walk because they got Jahan Dotson. And before even seeing Jahan Dotson on the field, we already replaced him because from the top down to Ron Rivera, I think it kind of stops. I do think he's a good guy, a good head coach, but above him, that front office, I definitely feel like they could be arrogant enough to believe that they replaced Terry McLaurin in the draft. And if they did, that's just speculation. But if they did, then maybe they'd let him walk. But according to this report, it doesn't seem like they are. They're going to pay him. They're going to do something smart for once. And unfortunately, that might not be the best for our dynasty rosters.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I guess my only pushback on the idea that he's not worth in the 106 is that you have to assume that the 106 is going to develop into something that's greater than what Terry McLaurin's already put out there on tape, or at least not even out there on tape, rather, just even in the box scores, right? And we're talking 2 top 24 seasons. He was like number 24, like 25th last year, and that was with even worse quarterback play than the year prior. And then he was like around the 19th or 20th. So we're saying 2 top 24 seasons, like after he's essentially like established himself as at least the team's wide receiver 1. And do you think that you can get that with the 106 like from next year? Or heck, even if we're talking about from this year's class?
Well, you really got to talk about next year, because if you talk about this year's class, then it's probably no, because in this year's class, when you get to the 106, that's right after Treylon Burks, Drake London, and Garrett Wilson, and those would be the arguments that I would have to make. But next year, you have to remember in Superflex, you're going to definitely add 3 quarterbacks, like for sure. Not joking this year. Like this year, we were wrong.
We'll definitely have 3 next year.
We'll have 3 in the first round next year. So that pushes it. So then the conversation is like Terry McLaurin or Garrett Wilson. I mean, it's the Jets. If my argument was predicated around Washington being the bane of Terry McLaurin's existence, then like the Jets can't be that much better, right? But they did a really good job surrounding Zach Wilson. If they're going to be the same as last year, okay, that's really bad, right? But you added Brees Hall, you added Garrett Wilson. You got yourself a blocking tight end, even though you drafted Rucker. You know who Rucker reminds me of? I was just thinking about this today, and I'm really sorry. Drew Sample. He reminds me of the Drew Sample pick.
Yeah.
So, and you know what? Drew Sample kind of helps your team. Like, he's still okay at blocking. I just don't know that he should have been a second-round pick. That's kind of what Jeremy Ruckert is. But anyways, they did a pretty good job surrounding Zach Wilson. So, I mean, I guess if I had to bet on an organization between the two, I'd probably pick the Jets. And Garrett Wilson, obviously significantly younger, much better draft capital, even though Terry McLaurin has obviously proven that wrong. So I think that's a tough decision. I don't think that's as easy as a lot of people would say. I think some people listening to this would probably have a knee-jerk reaction and take Terry McLaurin, but I'd probably put a lot of thought into that one and probably go Garrett Wilson, to be honest with you.
I don't know, I guess, but I think it's a testament to what Terry McLaurin has done, considering McLaurin came in as a third-round pick.
Right.
And we're talking about guys that were drafted in like the mid to early first. I mean, just this past year, which is a little bit different than most other classes. But still, I mean, around the guys that he was drafted around, what was it? Deontay Johnson was taken about the same time as Terry, and we really only saw him hit his ceiling because he was tethered to a quarterback with a withered arm.
Short A-dot. Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the only reason why, or at least the majority of the reason why Deontay Johnson's target share ballooned last year to like almost like DeAndre Hopkins, like prime DeAndre Hopkins level, like target share. He was like 28, 29%. But beforehand, he was sitting there just like the same with Terry, like good wide receivers. But their situation allowed them to kind of like hit that ceiling, or his situation did. And I could see the same for Terry at some point, but it's just we need to have that situation. But otherwise, he's still a top 24 wide receiver. And that's the bet that you have to make with that first round pick. Like out of the gate has to be like a top 24 receiver. And can you see that happening with those guys? Like, and that's where you need to do your homework. And even in this class, I find it difficult to say that that's going to be the case. Like we can squint and see the opportunity for almost every single one of those guys, from Drake London, like all the way on down to, let's say, Sky Moore, if you want to include like the back,
Sure. Yeah.
So if you want to throw him in there too, we can squint and say the opportunity is going to be there. But can we also really say that over the course of a 17-game regular season, are they really all going to make it? Like all 6-7 of them are going to make it? No, that's absolutely not true.
They can't.
Yeah. So I mean, that's kind of the reasoning for, at least behind my thought process, saying like, I think I'd rather Mclaurin like right now. And even if still quarterback is going to be the thing that kind of hampers his value, at least we know the floor for McLaurin is top 24. Whereas the rest of the guys, they could just completely bust right out.
I mean, they could, but I mean, you also have to factor in the years that you're getting back to, and it doesn't matter as much at wide receiver. But like I mentioned earlier, Terry McLaurin seems young right now because he is. But if they get the quarterback situation fixed, I think he's 24 going on. I think he's playing this season at 25.
Okay. No, take that back. I think he's 26.
Well, check it out while I go through the rest of my point here, because I think that you look at Terry McLaurin and you say he's been very productive. He can continue to be productive in the future. But look, all of these guys, what do you got?
He'll be 27 at the start of the season.
That usually really good at ages. So changes
things.
Yeah, so if they figure out the quarterback situation in 2 years, you're talking about 29. So that even goes more to that point. But then the other point is just that you can look at so this class looks like a bad class, right? But you can look from, and let's say point per game basis, just because Jameson Williams is probably not going to start the season. On a point per game basis, I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if any wide receiver all the way from Garrett Wilson down to, let's say, Sky Moore finishes in the top 24 this season. And in points per game include Jameson Williams, because he could too. So that's a lot of guys that could finish where Terry McLaurin's finishing 3 years in. And so yes, it is a bit of a gamble because you haven't seen these guys and you have seen Terry McLaurin, but we've also seen enough out of Terry McLaurin's organization, the quarterback play associated with him. And I don't want to be a watch the tape guy, but you can just tell by his demeanor when he's playing.
He knows it's bad.
it's bad because he's getting missed on wide open opportunities that he is generating. He is the
Mhm.
epitome of earned targets. Terry McLaurin is an excellent route runner, great speed, pretty good hands, and he's just, he might as well just shrug half the game because
Oh, yeah.
it doesn't really matter when Taylor Heineke's, can't throw a 5-yard out to save his life. So what is he going to do? What's Terry going to do when he breaks somebody's ankle and he gets ran off the sideline, right? So
Right.
in terms of Dynasty, getting back to what to do about its value, since it's all over the place and if you don't have them, you might as well throw a feeler and see if people are kind of thinking what I'm thinking. Especially, like I said, second in a throw in, like I've seen some trades get done. Yes, it's worth that, but I'm deathly afraid of sending a random 2023 first and it ending up being the 104, 105, 106, and
Yeah,
I've
but if
got Terry
and
McLaurin. I mean, that would not be good.
yeah, and if you haven't had your rookie draft yet, and do you think that you're kind of like that, like you were saying earlier, like that one piece away? I mean, I would throw a second and a throw in for Terry
Yeah.
McLaurin. I think that would be just, I'd be more than
Okay.
happy with that.
So I don't know if it gets done with a 2022 pick with a second and a throw, and I think people are so enamored with 2023 pick. So which first? What's the earliest first in this 2022 class that you would give for him?
110.
So George Pickens. So you wouldn't give
Yeah.
Sky Moore for him?
Yeah. I
Oh
think that's
man,
the
you let
cutoff.
me talk about comparing him with Garrett Wilson. I mean,
I
I
guess.
probably yeah. I thought I was the aggressive one. I probably would say, nah, I'll take him over Sky Moore, I think. So right before Sky Moore and George Pickens is where I would take him.
Yeah, okay,
Um,
that's fair. I
but
mean,
yeah, it's
I'd
like
still
right there.
rather me. I'm still stuck on the
The landing spot
idea.
with
Yeah,
Sky Moore,
well, not
yeah.
just the landing spot, but also the marriage of Patrick Mahomes, like his ADOT decreasing over the past like 4 seasons. Travis Kelsey's like age getting up there, so then you just kind of fits into like what they want to do.
Yeah, he does
Um,
fit really well. I mean, Sky
yeah,
Moore does fit quite well. I think Sky Moore is a little bit more of a gamble than some of the other guys.
that's fair.
But it's close.
Yeah,
If your team's not competitive, I would probably end up taking Sky Moore too, because at the end of the day, what you say you're going to do on Twitter it usually doesn't end up being exactly what you do for your dynasty roster. So
that's fair. And also, like with the Pickens pick, all right, if any other team than the Steelers had drafted him, would we have really cared?
no, yeah, yeah,
Because
you're
really,
right.
it's just like
I
because
mean,
the
we
Steelers
would, but
draft
in the
him.
second,
Yeah, because the Steelers drafted, everyone's like, "Oh, Steelers get another wide
every
receiver
year.
every year. The third round wide receiver. Go back to Deontay. Like, he's gonna wind
I
up
don't
hitting
even
at
know
some."
that I would call James Washington a bust either. And
No,
Martavis Bryant was incredible until he
yeah,
didn't get his life together off the field. So
yeah. So
it's
I would
been all
argue.
of them pretty much.
Yeah, I almost feel like the way that it's not in the same vein, but like you were saying earlier about us like kind of double counting Sky Moore's landing spot, it's like
Mhm.
George Pickens, that landing spot, Steelers, wide receiver you of the NFL. Let's go. Like,
I mean, that's totally fair because we're drafting George Pickens like 5 spots ahead of Alec Pierce, and I don't know that we would be doing that if the roles were reversed.
yeah.
If you reverse the roles, it'd probably be Alec Pierce right there in the first round
Heck yeah.
for
If
this yeah,
if
you're
Alec
right.
Pierce went to Pittsburgh, everyone would be like, "Oh, Alec Pierce, oh my
Yep.
gosh, like Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, Steelers wide receivers."
And
We'd be
then
freaking out.
Pickens would switch right into that role where he's like the popular second round pick that like you just some people like me, I'll take Pierce in every single draft and just think I'm a genius, and that's what George Pickens would end up being.
Right.
So you're right. I mean, the Steelers landing spot is probably just as bad as the Kansas City landing spot for double counting because of the lore involved with the wide
Right.
receivers.
Even though
So
at the
let's
end of the day, one guy's catching passes from Matt Ryan, the other guy's catching passes from Kenny Pickett.
yeah, might as well, right? I was thinking, let's jump into that conversation for a second. Quick sidebar, because I was thinking between the Desmond Ridder and Marcus Mariota argument that's been going around recently. It's why is the argument between who's better at playing quarterback, Desmond Ridder or Marcus Mariota? The argument should be, would it be more beneficial to lose with Marcus Mariota, or would it be more beneficial to lose with Desmond Ridder? Because you're
Yes.
losing either way. So infinitely more beneficial to lose with Desmond Ridder. Just throw him out there. If he's terrible, you get an early pick. If he's good, you've got a
But yeah.
quarterback.
Yeah, I think that's the only thing would be that depending on the timing and how many losses, like, seeding and all that for next year's picks or whatever, it could be better for them. It's better for them to lose in general.
Well, that's the part I didn't mention. If Desmond Ridder is legit, then that's tough. But then again, like I said, then you have a quarterback. So who cares?
But who knows? Because just looking at the general archetype of, like, not necessarily, it's not the same thing because Ritter actually put in like full season or whatever. But if they only put him out there for a couple of games and wind up losing, do they go into 2023 the same way the 49ers are going into this season looking at Trey Lance? Because they don't know what they got in Trey Lance, right? You can watch all the tape in the world about those 2 starts that Lance had last year. And unless you really give him a fair shake and he's going to get 6, 8, 10 games, are you even capable of saying, oh yeah, we know what he can do, like we know what he can't do? So unless we're really getting that out of Ridder this year, I think it's just, I don't know, like losing games. I guess the question is how many games. Like if they lose,
I mean, most of them probably.
yeah. So then sure, then I think that makes more sense from the Atlanta having to evaluate the pick that they put into Desmond Ridder. But if they just toss him out there, let's say I don't know, it's week 13.
Sure.
And they've, like, on top of the fact that they're completely out of it. So let's say effort may or may not be an issue, but they've probably sustained like catastrophic injuries and they just don't even know how to, they can't even really compare. There's not an apples to apples comparison to what you would get at the beginning of the season. So
just start them.
Yeah, exactly. I think
start
that would be,
the gate.
I have no issue with that. But if for a 3rd round pick, there's really no, I mean, there's no, like, there's really no impetus for them to do that, given the draft capital they sunk in him.
Sure. But then the difference between he and the Pickett situation, first of all, Pickett's a 1st-round pick. You're going to have to start him at some point, no matter what. And then secondly, even though Pickett was the 1st-round pick and Ridder was the 3rd-round pick, Pickett's kind of more like the Russell Wilson, Matt Flynn scenario because the Steelers think that they're in contention for a Super Bowl like every year. And their defense really isn't as good as they probably believe it is anymore. In terms of being like elite, like the best defense in the league, they're probably just outside the top 5 at this point. That's not enough to win you a Super Bowl, let alone really get you to the playoffs in today's NFL. Alone, like you need at least a solid offense with the 6th best defense or something like that, So they might be rolling out Mitchell Trubisky because of the veteran aspect, and I put that in air quotes, because they think that they're, in contention. So maybe you don't start Kenny Pickett right away if he doesn't seem like he's ready because you guys want to win.
But they're going to be answering questions about him every week if they don't.
If they don't, sure. But the Falcons they can't want to win. I mean, everybody, quote unquote, wants to win going into the season. And, the clips from training camp are going to be all hoorah about it. But at the end of the day, that their roster's in shambles. You might as well just start Desmond Ridder right away. But that brings us back into the wide receiver conversation. We've got Jameson Williams looking like he might make it to the field in August for training camp. That does not mean he would be ready to play or cleared to play in August, but he would be on the football practicing with the team in August. That is according to himself. That is what he believes, assuming that he's been advised by his medical staff. So putting him on the field in August would mean probably late September for playing football, which is good to me. I don't want him to start the season anyways. So what do you think about Jameson Williams' value, specifically how he's falling in rookie drafts and auctions right now?
I would be more than happy to scoop up that value, not just because of the opportunity for possibly having a couple more games this year, but it's just, think about the plan for Detroit. I mean, he can say all day long that he wants to be available in August and he's going to come out in September. The Lions have zero incentive to play him.
Don't play until November.
And what they've done with their wallets kind of indicate that, right? Going out and getting guys like DJ Chark in order to, like, essentially fill that role as they need to, because let's face it, like, Jared Goff is not going to be there in 2023, right? We can all agree with that. Yeah. So if they want this core, this roster, in order to actually have the capability of dropping in the quarterback from 2023 or a free agent or whatever, it doesn't matter at this point, like, what Jameson Williams' health is going to be, because we already knew how that plan was going to, like, unfold, at least in some degree or some way, shape, or form. that he wasn't going to be available at the start of the season. And even if he does come in at some point, he's going to be the best wide receiver, like on that, like within that group. Sorry to the Amon-Ra St. Brown truthers,
Oh
but
yeah, he's
he'd be the primary wide receiver in that group. And then whomever winds up being under center for that team, like, whatever the future holds for them, then that's the guy that we're going to attach our value to with Jameson. So, okay, cool. Like, if he's saying he could be available, all right, fine. But the team has no incentive to push him. And I don't think they're going to. If that was the case,
Yep.
then they wouldn't have made all these moves throughout the offseason to make sure that that role or that position is insulated, so that once they do have the team in place, once they've made all the moves, the roster moves necessary in order to say, this is going to be our offense, this is going to be the fighting Dan Campbells on offense, then this is what it's going to look like. And Jameson doesn't have to factor into that picture right now. He can factor into that picture in mid-October, and that'd be just as well. And
Sure.
give him enough time to get 8 to 10-ish games under his belt, that he doesn't have any setbacks, and that he's ready for whomever the next quarterback is going to be. But I mean, if he says he's ready in August, that's fine. But the team, I just can't see the team rushing him into a situation where they know that they're planning for the future, and the future is not 2022.
See, I looked at it kind of more glass half full and saying that at least I know for sure he's missing games now.
Yeah.
Because before that, I mean, there was not an absolute guarantee that he couldn't play to start the season. It's just, it would have been scary.
Yeah.
There's no way he could have been full health if he started the season. So at least he's definitely missing until late September, early October. Maybe I would be a little happier with late October, but in general, this kind of made me a little more comfortable keeping him in my wide receiver 2 in this class. It's really tough to take an injured player at wide receiver 2 when you have to take him ahead of Drake London and you have to take him ahead of Treylon Burks. Treylon Burks used to be my wide receiver 2, and he gets a great landing spot. So it's like that makes it doubly hard to stick with your gut, right? Because now he used to be your wide receiver 2 for a long time. You did a lot of work on him. And now he gets this great landing spot, well, supposed to be great landing spot, because no AJ Brown there, no one really there of note. And you just have to be patient, because Jameson Williams is not going to be available for you right away. It's going to be not quite the Justin Jefferson situation. Justin Jefferson was just terrible his first 2 games, and I remember Twitter panicking. But Jameson Williams is going to be almost forgotten about the first, week or so, a month or so. And then he's just going to pop off, and maybe he doesn't just pop off, because I think he's incredible. He's right up there next to Garrett Wilson, but the guy's coming back from injury. So I would take the discount you're getting now, but maybe, just maybe, you get a little bit of a discount later if people wait all this time for him and then he comes out and doesn't produce right away. And then that's when you really jump on him. If you miss the rookie draft discount, maybe you get a second chance, just maybe. But I wouldn't rely on it. I would try to get him right now. I'm taking him in a lot of drafts. It's not hard to draft Jameson Williams right now. It's not hard to trade up a little bit. Everybody wants to trade back. Everybody has their favorite running back in the second round. People like me stand Davis Price. You got people that, Pierre Strong in the late second, they want to go him a little early. Like, everybody wants to trade back because they think the class is so bad. It's really not that hard to trade up this year. So, trade up and take them ahead of Drake London or whatever you have to do. But I think this time next year, you're going to be very, very happy to have Jameson Williams on your roster. And you have to remind yourself, not all these wide receivers are going to hit. They all got great landing spots, but they're historically, we're not getting 6 top 24 rookie wide receivers or anything like that.
Either that or something like horrific has happened to the other 18 veteran wide receivers that they had to, beat out in order to get in there. But I mean, just even think about what happened last year. Like Jalen Waddle, came into the league injured, and then what happened? How many weeks did it take for him to establish himself? It took him like most of the season. Marquise Brown did the exact same thing like 3 years ago. Yeah. Where he wound up dropping weight. Didn't he lose like 15 pounds?
He came in the league like 180, and he started playing at like 165, 170.
Right. And so it's like, how can you not see? I mean, unless Jameson is just like this absolute freak of nature, which is entirely possible, but how can you not see a similar situation or a similar ramp up period for him? So that's why I'm attaching no value to, I guess, his early season production, because traditionally rookie wide receivers, they take at least 3 to 4 weeks in order to ramp up anyway.
Anyways, yeah.
Yeah, and
And a
so
lot of that's mental, which is stuff he's going to
right.
get to do anyways while injured.
Yeah, and like even if the best of them, like Jamar Chase, like his first week, it was like 16-17% target share. It took him a few weeks in order to ramp up.
Yeah.
Took him a few weeks in order to figure out, all right, this is what the NFL game speed is going to be like. And he had Joe Burrow under center. So you're expecting Jameson Williams to do the exact same thing, but with Jared Goff?
Sure.
Nah. Like we can't do that. We can't place the same level of expectation like on these wide receivers without any context involved.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll take the dip for sure,
Yeah.
but I'm not expecting anything like until probably around like the mid-October timeframe.
Just put a standing DM in the manager's email box that has Jameson Williams and just say, look, slide it across the table when you're ready. This offer is there for you.
Yeah. I mean, because it's just and I think this is my biggest gripe about this entire wide receiver class is like we had so many wide receivers get first round draft capital. It just like first round draft capital stopped mattering. Like it doesn't matter.
Second.
Yeah. It's like it doesn't matter like what draft capital you're assigned. And just like everyone just went hog wild with saying, well, like essentially all these guys are supposed to hit. And you made the statement earlier. There's no way that seven of these guys are going to hit.
And tell me which one's not going to hit.
Yeah, I don't know.
But no idea.
It makes more sense that the guy that's guaranteed to miss about a month of the season is probably not going to hit, or at least a hit in the way that we expect him to. But
that's fair because hit counts as year one top 24, but that can't happen technically because
like Amon-Ra St. Brown is not a hit. Like technically speaking, Amon-Ra St. Brown is not a hit.
Right.
So it's just if we use that as the measuring stick, then Jameson Williams, like he's already behind the curve. He's already behind the 8 ball in terms of his ability to be a hit in year one. That's not to say that he's bad. It's just that we already know his situation coming into it.
And just like Amon-Ra St. Brown, top 24, he might be top 24 point per game by the end of the year as well. But I guess the point in that is like Jameson Williams is going to miss so much time that maybe we get 3 dips, because then he's not going to technically be a hit. And then we're talking about in 2023, maybe getting a discount on him. I don't know, but it was a good job bringing up Jalen Waddle because I totally forgot about that. I just remembered him breaking the record. Didn't he break rookie reception record?
I think so. Yeah, that's right.
He missed some time, and I'm like, I totally forgot about that. What could he have done if he didn't miss some time?
I would assume like Waddle's probably hit like in by PPR standards just because of the number of catches.
I think he is. I would have to look, but I'm pretty sure he finished top 24 last year.
Yeah, Amon-Ra is probably like right at the cliff though.
Like I'm pretty sure Amon-Ra did not finish top 24, but he did in points per game because
that wouldn't surprise me.
He went bonkers when TJ Hawkinson went down. So, targets are earned and vacated targets aren't real and everything. But I'm just saying, when TJ Hawkinson went down, Amon-Ra St. Brown went off.
Yeah.
So speaking of guys going off, but maybe not in the best way, Kadarius Toney has gotten a ton of positive buzz lately. And it's weird for positive buzz at this time of the year to be news, but it is because we spent so much of the offseason with Kadarius Toney slander leading into Kadarius Toney trading, which is the worst thing you can do, by the way. Don't slander a player and then try to trade him because obviously it doesn't work, which is why he's still on the team. But there's been a lot of positive news since then, and a lot of dynasty managers who have Kadarius Toney might be sick of him at this point. And I remember talking about it with you last year where a lot of this was just a snowball effect of things building up. Remember some of the ridiculous negative narratives about him were like, he wore the wrong shoes or something like that, or shoes didn't work that day, and they just kept compounding. And then all of a sudden it was like, Kadarius Toney's a terrible dude. And I don't know Kadarius Toney. I don't know if he is or isn't, but I know that a lot of that stuff that led up to his value going down, his playing time seemed like it was going down, was just kind of nonsense. And if you could see past it, which is what we talked about last year, if you could just see past some of this nonsense, he's a great buy right now. And we wanted Amon-Ra St. Brown. That was the big thing last year. We were still taking Amon-Ra St. Brown over him, even though Toney was a first and Amon-Ra St. Brown was a fourth. It turns out we were right about Amon-Ra St. Brown, but still wrong about Kadarius Toney. So a little bit after that conversation we had last year, Kadarius Toney puts together some really, really nice games. So some games that tell you not only were you wrong, but he actually probably should have been a first round pick given some of those games. And now we're looking at another big dip just because a lot of people have been tired of these compounding complaints towards him. But one of the things was he missed voluntary training camp. Well, it just came out recently that he had surgery on his knee, minor surgery to clean up his knee. And we don't know if it could have been related to that because these things just keep compounding with him. So, I mean, are you finally on the buy Kadarius Toney train like I might be at this point?
Sure, because I'm trying to push past like our own negativity that we have assigned to him. Like, can he get
Yeah, I
moved?
agree.
Sure. I mean, literally at this point, after not hearing anything about the chances for a guy like Marquise Brown to get traded, and he's the wide receiver that winds up getting moved.
Right.
And we've heard all of this negative stuff about Kadarius Toney. Kadarius Toney is going to get traded. The Giants have been taking open calls about him, blah, 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 blah. I mean, you've got, those are your two extremes. Like, we're hearing all of this, we're getting all this smoke about Kadarius Toney, but no fire. We heard
Right.
absolutely nothing indicating Marquise Brown like wants to try and get moved, and he's the one that gets moved. Like, all of a sudden, like on draft day, we hear he's getting moving. So I'm trying not to pay too much attention to that portion of it. The thing I am trying to pay attention to is how the market is valuing him.
Right.
And after every single negative thing that we've heard about him, what was it? He didn't have the right cleats, or like,
that was the shoe thing. Yeah,
yeah,
he
the
had
shoe
like the
thing
wrong
from last
cleats or
year.
something, and he got
like
had to miss a
missing
practice.
OTAs, or
Like,
missing practice for
it's
that and all.
ridiculous.
I mean, but for everything that's come out, the result has not been him getting moved. The result has not been him losing playing time. The result has been him losing value in the market, because once they were capable of putting him out there after he got through his injuries, he was out there.
Mm-hmm.
And he was top 20 in terms of efficiency. Like, his yards per route run, 2.14 yards per route run for Kadarius Toney. He tied Tyreek Hill in yards per route run last season.
I believe it.
But that's on a third of the number of routes that Hill ran. But still, it's just, if you're getting that level of efficiency, like that on the types of targets that he was getting, he wasn't getting just downfield targets. He was also getting short, intermediate. So we could see and squint and see the upside in a guy like him. And now, I mean, if you think about them, I memean, Daboll bringing over some of the Bills' philosophy, like over to New York, Daniel Jones, like, he was good deep. So it's like, if there's any sort of chance that he could wind up being that yards after the catch type of guy, because Sterling Shepard injured his Achilles, in December? So it's like, it's Toney, it's Galladay, it's Slayton still kicking around.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he should be out there. Like, he should be out there earning targets, like, from week one, assuming he's not moved between now and then. But, I mean, if the opportunity is there, and the offense should now be an offense that we think, from a play scheme or play calling perspective, should be one that's more efficient, why not invest in Kadarius Toney, other than the fact that you might not like him? If you're going to get a discount on him, I would like him. I would like the guy I'm going to get a discount for. So, like, what's not to like at this point?
That's honestly what it turns into. It's like, you just get so sick of hearing about the guy that he looks like he pops out on your roster as somebody that you should move. Like, for me, that guy's Amon-Ra St. Brown. When I see Amon-Ra St. Brown on one of my rosters, just because I drafted him late, I immediately try to move him. He pops out to me as somebody that I should try to move. Not because I didn't like him. I obviously liked him because I drafted him, but because he was a 4th round pick. It's so hard for those guys to have prolonged success. Maybe there's a longer rebuild than we think, blah, blah, blah. To a lot of people, that's Kadarius Toney. When they see him on the roster, they're like, this is a guy that has some value that I have to move. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's enough value for him that they move him for, and that's how you could capitalize. And then you're going to like Kadarius Toney. And if you really want to galaxy brain it, if someone's going to get traded without affecting their value, it's probably going to be someone like Kadarius Toney, because what does he really have besides he's got blazing speed and run after the catch ability? What team can mess that up?
Right.
Like
the Cardinals could mess that up.
That's true. DK Metcalf needed the perfect landing spot, and he got it. Right?
Yeah.
Like, the Seahawks played him perfectly. That was perfect. Like, Kadarius Toney doesn't need the perfect landing spot. If he gets traded, obviously the team accepts him for who he is, takes him with whatever baggage he might even have. Maybe he doesn't even have any more baggage than the regular guy, right? So whoever trades for him wants him. Hopefully they're creative, but even if they're not, it's really hard to mess up Kadarius Toney. And some points that didn't make it into the show sheet were on Daniel Jones. There's been 2 quotes in the past week from Brian Daboll about Daniel Jones airing it out. That's all he's talking about. One of them is Daniel Jones needs to air it out, and two, I forget what the exact quote was, but it was something like Daniel Jones needs to like grab the bull by the horns and whatever, like whatever motivational quote he needs to give Daniel Jones. But I guess the point is, if all you're talking about in the media is needing to air it out with Daniel Jones in private, you're probably like, dude, you need to get it together, which would involve Kadarius Toney, right?
Yes.
And Daniel Jones didn't get the 5th-year option, so he better ball out. If he wants to extend his career.
He has no other option.
He has no other option. So that's going to bring us to our last conversation, shifting gears just a little bit to talk about a rookie running back. We've got Pierre Strong being considered as a strong candidate for the James White role going forward. The reason that I wanted to bring that up, well, that seems pretty minuscule, and I'll credit who that was from in just a moment when you start talking, but the reason that's important is because I was viewing Pierre Strong as a good buy candidate at his early to mid 3rd round ADP solely because I thought that Damian Harris could get traded, and then Pierre Strong would be moving into the Ramondre Stevenson role. Now, I know that Pierre Strong was a solid pass catcher, and he could even do some gadget stuff like Joe Bryant mentioned in our email newsletters how Pierre Strong was 9 for 9 on passes on gadget plays in San Diego State. So that's an interesting tidbit, but maybe he could do that Patriot gadget stuff that they used to like to do with Julian Edelman. I think James White's done some of that stuff too, right? But
yeah.
Point being, James White's still injured with the hip, and Pierre Strong's got the opportunity to actually see the field early and not be the third string plotter that I thought that he might end up being. That's got me a little bit excited about Pierre Strong.
What's not to like at this point? Because I would much rather take a shot on a guy with his profile that you could kind of see. Let's say if Ramondre Stevenson gets injured or Damian Harris goes down for a week or two, which both things happened last year, you could wind up seeing a game where they wind up he at least plays like the RB2 role, like should one of the other two guys go down. And what he ran like a sub 4.40 at his pro day, if I'm remembering correctly. So it's like he has the build to be, let's say, a part of a committee, like a significant part of a committee. And with how often the Patriots have chosen to run, like I give Mac Jones all the credit in the world. I mean, he has been like I think for as much hate as the fantasy community kind of bestowed upon him because everybody wanted Trey Lance to go to San Francisco instead of Mac Jones. I think right now, from a fantasy perspective, most folks will want Mac Jones on their fantasy roster than Trey Lance. If we're being honest, I mean,
maybe they don't want him, but maybe it would be the right thing.
Right.
But I don't think I could give up Trey Lance for him, but I mean,
sure. But for all
in
the
terms of real NFL,
though,
like I'd say Mac Jones is a success so far.
Right. But for all the positives, now you do have to think about the fact that the Patriots did wind up, kind of putting him in a corner a little bit because he did have a game where he only attempted 3 passes.
Yeah.
And there were a number of times where they were running on like 3rd and 7 and 3rd and 8. Like, so Jones does have his limitations. So there are going to be those games where Bill Belichick will probably just say, yeah, Ramondre, like, we're just going to have you run it. Like, Mac, take a seat, or just hand it off. Like, don't try and do anything. Don't try and do anything funky. Just hand it off. And let's get out of this game and go home. Like that sort of thing. Sure. So it's entirely possible that we could see that like out of them. So if there's going to be any type of profile for running back that I would want to take a shot on in the later rounds, it's guys like that. I mean, it's the Khalil Herberts, although Khalil Herbert probably has like 15 pounds on him, I think. But sure. I mean, those are the types of guys where if the opportunity were to present itself, they're the ones that are in line for more work and not just like passing down work, which is great for Strong because he does have that in his bag of tricks. But could he be the Patriots starter and RB1 for a game? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for a short stint, like if they have to put Ramondre on like short-term IR, could he be the RB2 like right next to Damian Harris? Yes. Yep. So if you can say yes to both of those questions for any guy that you would take in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round in a rookie draft, I would much rather take that running back over any of the wide receivers that will most likely be available in that same range, just because those are the guys that will get you RB1 weeks. It's much more difficult for, let's say, the Justin Rosses of the world for you to get a wide receiver.
Romeo Doubs.
Yeah, Romeo Doubs or any of those guys like Jalen Tolbert, like for all the hype that he's getting right now. Like it's much easier for a guy like Strong to wind up getting top 12 in his position versus the wide receivers at a similar cost. So yeah,
At that buy point, yeah, you're right. Like there's a tradition going in there's a transition going into like the third round of the drafts this year where it's like these wide receivers are probably not worth more than these running backs.
yeah, it's
Isaiah
so
Spiller,
difficult. Yeah,
Samir White.
I mean Isaiah Spiller has a starting job week 1, but that's a fact.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, I would much rather take a shot on him, and the fact, like, hopefully he doesn't wind up fumbling his job away like Joshua Kelly or any of the other guys that like the Chargers have tried to trot out over the past couple of years. But assuming he's just even replaceable, like at replacement level talent, he immediately supplants Kelly, Roundtree, any of those other guys. And now he is the Melvin Gordon of the Chargers offense behind Austin Eckler. So
Yeah.
And that's all you
say that
need.
about a lot of those guys. I mean,
yeah, and that's really what you want from any of those running backs. Versus with wide receivers, with their draft capital, you're already telling yourself a story that it's going to be difficult for them to even be on the starting squad like during practice.
Yeah, fourth round all the way to undrafted. Like, just make the team, and then we'll talk about your dynasty outlook.
Bingo. So if you're already trying to like squint to see them getting practice with the starters, give me the running back, man. It's just so much easier for their path to opportunity throughout their rookie season. And then we'll just figure out like what that's going to look like as it develops.
I had a tweet I've been working on how I'm going to phrase, but essentially I want every single running back from like Isaiah Spiller on in this year's draft, like all the way down to like Keontae Ingram, Kyron Williams. Like,
give me all those dudes.
If I had, let's pretend there's an unlimited taxi squad out there, I would be thrilled to have essentially every running back after like Tyrion Davis Price, or even like
give me Tyler
Spiller.
Beatty, Algier.
Tyler Algier. There's
Algier might be a little higher, but still, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, but my point is there's like, we talk so much trash about the 2022 class, and now that we're here and now that we got landing spots, these are some of the best landing spots that I've ever seen in Dynasty. Now, you can't change the fact that the prospects are not as good as in years past.
Right.
Okay, that's fine. But a lot of Dynasty's value, a lot of real NFL production comes from the environment, comes from the organization, the offense, the coaching staff, the quarterback. So many good landing spots where it's like, usually in the third round running backs, you need 4 things to happen for them to even make the team, even to maintain any relevance.
Right.
But you can look at every one of these running backs down to, like I said, Kyron Williams, where these guys started the year could be one injury away. That's a lot to say about a 4th, 5th, 6th round running back. I want all these guys. I want the undrafted guys. Like, give me in every rookie draft, just grab a couple 4th round picks for nothing. Grab some late thirds for nothing. And just, I don't care. There's some running backs I like more than others. I like Keontae Ingram a lot, so I've been taking a lot of shots on him.
Ingram's
I
solid.
like Pierre Strong a lot. I've been taking shots on him. Davis Price is another one I like. But the fact of the matter, even the ones I don't like, I want on my team. I still want Kyron Williams on my team because these guys are free and they got some money landing spots this year. It's really not that bad of a class once everything's settled out. Just quarterbacks.
Yeah, and it's hilarious to think that on the flip side, it's every single wide receiver. We are not, I would say, not literally every single wide receiver from this class, but almost every single wide receiver from this class, we are like tripping and falling over each other in order to get pretty much everyone down to Justin Ross, like I mentioned earlier, just because the landing spot. But for every running back, it's like, well, I mean, I don't know, Beatty, he went to Baltimore's, but the J.K. Dobbins is there, who was injured last year. Gus Edwards is still there, who's also injured last year and older. So it's like
Mike Davis is there, who was absolutely miserable and got beat out by Patterson.
Right. And it's like, Tyler Algier. I mean, the Falcons are going to suck, right? But Cordell Patterson's there, right?
Slated as Cordell Patterson.
Yeah, Cordell Patterson, who's 30 years old, who's going to be playing wide receiver more than traditional running back. Right. It's like Damian Williams, who, I mean, should have been Super Bowl MVP. Damian Williams
he should
is there. But
as weird as that is to say.
But like when you think about it for a second, like you could see 3, 4, 5, 6 of these guys.
You could get starters. Like that's the point. That's kind of what I want to try to phrase in the tweet, is that like in 3 years from now, if we had 3 third round or later running backs in the top 3 rounds of dynasty startup drafts, I would not be surprised. I
Right.
wouldn't. If Kyron Williams was a third round startup pick in 3 years, not super surprised. I mean, that's an easy story to tell. James Conner is on a cheap deal. Next year, he's worth getting cut. Maybe Kyler moves on and they start a whole new regime.
Mhm.
Sure. Now we're talking about Keontae Ingram as the starting running back for a decent offense. Like, you could do that with all of these guys, and they're so cheap. So, and I think the point is in your case with the wide receivers, that's why these running backs are so cheap, because almost every wide receiver got a pretty good landing spot.
Yeah.
I mean, like Thornton getting second round draft capital to the Patriots, like
Yeah.
what? And now he's draftable. He's a second round wide receiver. So,
Right. I
I
mean,
mean,
we're not
list goes
advocating for you
on.
to go out there and like trade your like a fourth rounder to go pick up like Sincere McCormick. But
Right.
I mean,
But
some of
like,
the other guys though that actually
yeah,
have the size, speed, at like athletic profile that if given the opportunity, could they repeat essentially the same performance that Khalil Herbert did last year when David Montgomery went
sure.
down? And
Sure.
if you could see that happening, and if you can tell yourself a story of, yeah, give this guy 15-ish touches and he can wind up with 80 yards and a score, then yeah, I would put that guy on my roster. I don't think McCormick's going to do that though.
No, but and that's fair too. But even talking about like between Damian Pierce, who I like a lot, but is ending up getting too expensive because he looks like he might be the starting running back, even though Marlon Mack could technically still keep the job, I guess.
He could.
Um, but Damian Pierce, you have to draft at like 202 to 205. But I mean, when you get to like 303 and you draft Pierre Strong, yeah, I expect Damian Pierce to be much more valuable than Pierre Strong. But this class is so strange that if by the end of the year Pierre Strong had more rookie touches than Damian Pierce, I'm not that surprised.
Mhm.
So, give me quantity with these rookie running backs, and just hope some of them pan out, especially if you have a taxi squad. You could throw 5 of them on your taxi squad. And if none of them pan out, drop them all next year because you spent nothing.
Nothing on him. Yeah.
Acquire fourth round picks, and you're still looking at like Kyron Williams in the fourth round. Like, okay,
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Yeah, how much are we still valuing the Elijah Mitchells of the world, the Khalil
Yep.
Herberts of the world? I mean, should I bet you like Chuba Hubbard probably still has some some
A little
latent
bit,
value.
probably.
Well,
Like, at least on rosters, probably.
yeah, so it's like the running backs, yeah, those late round running backs, the guys that we've already essentially pigeonholed into being like handcuffs or
Mhm.
like the back end like RB2s or RB3s on those rosters. Yeah, like I'd much rather have those than the guys that are wide receiver 4 5s like on
Sure.
their rosters. Yeah.
It might not make it either. We are definitely drafting wide receivers that won't make teams at this point. It just happens.
Yeah. How many folks are still excited to be holding Amari Rodgers on their roster?
Right. Right. Hopefully that works out. That's insane.
We'll
Third
see.
round Clemson wide receiver. But
Yeah.
that's going to do it for today. Go get yourself some running backs. Thank you for coming out. Like, subscribe, rate, review, and we will catch you all next week.
Peace.